Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And each season, we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now, we are reviewing Severance Season 2, and today we're on Episode 8, titled Sweet Vitriol. Sarah, do you want to kick us off with a summary of Episode 8?
Jen, you are not ready for this summary.
Oh, man. I'm probably not.
The summary is, discoveries are made.
No.
That's all that it says on IMDb. Discoveries are made.
Criminal. And I have contention with this one sentence summary as well. I want to fight it.
As you should. I wish you luck in fighting the words.
Discoveries? That's some over-promising and under-delivering. I ever heard it. My goodness.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
IMDb's got jokes. Someone's having fun writing these,
I respect
honestly.
it.
I know, it's great. They're just playing with us at this point. Oh, okay, well, let's start off with our episode titles for Episode 8. What is yours?
Mine is Très Chic.
Nice. Yes. My episode title is Salt's Neck.
Nice. Yeah, that was another potential one for me as well.
Nice. I love it. Okay, well, let's dive right in. We're going to share our high-level thoughts about just how Episode 8 landed with us, and then we're going to give a spoiler and dive fully in. Sarah, what do you think about Episode 8? This is a unique one.
This is a unique one. And I mean, honestly, for the past however many episodes, we have been calling for more Harmony Cobell. Her absence has been felt over the past few episodes. And they took all of that harmony that we have been missing and they put it all in this one episode, which I think is really interesting. I'm just constantly perplexed by the structure of the seasons of these shows, because now we've had 2 episodes in a row that kind of take us out of the main storyline. You know, it takes us out of Mark and Helly and Dylan and what they're all doing, and we explore Gemma and now Harmony, and I just find that really interesting, and I'm so curious what this sets up. This is an episode that, while I was interested the whole time and just so pleased to see Harmony, I was like, what are we doing? You know, like it's a really great world building and it's fun to explore this other location. It looks great. Patricia Arquette is amazing. And so I had a good time, but in the back of my head, I was just like, what is this side quest for? And obviously we won't know until additional episodes, and the ending gives a pretty clear on-ramp back into the larger story, but it did feel a little meandering to me, even though I was happy to be there. What about you?
Yeah, this episode was meandering and I was not happy to be there. I don't know. I feel like there's some interesting tidbits that I think are revealed. So discoveries were made, I suppose. But it's not the Cobell episode that I wanted. And I recognize that perhaps I need to be patient and give myself over to the show and go on the journey. And I'm sure everything that's been included in this episode is going to be used somehow in some way for our next 2 explosive episodes to end the season. But I just, the journey through this episode was not interesting and exciting to me. There are some interesting revelations. A lot of Cobell's backstory, I think, is pretty fascinating. But on the whole, I'm like, well, this is definitely not one of my favorite episodes of the season. And so it's been interesting for me to look back on my thoughts and reactions to a lot of the episodes this season in general, because I feel like I vacillate back and forth from episode to episode. Like, loved the previous one, this one didn't work for me. And then I'll love the next one and the last one won't work for me. So I find that there's an interesting pattern, which is perhaps reflective of the structure and pacing of the show's intentions and how they've written it to be something that's big and explosive. And then kind of this episode where you're like, I'm not sure what we're doing, but perhaps it'll all get strung together in some way. And then I find that these episodes that are more understated in nature, less overall happens, there's less world building that's revealed, I find them a little less engaging and interesting. So maybe I'm just looking for some big explosive spectacle. I don't know, but this didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy it, but I'm trying to be patient and just collect all of the details in my little basket as we skip down the path that will hopefully lead somewhere.
I mean, based on this pattern, though, I have some good news for you. You might enjoy the next episode a lot.
Yeah, and then I'm going to be disappointed by this finale.
Yeah,
which
dude.
tracks
It
with
does
season
track.
1.
Yeah, because I'm sure they're
Yeah.
going to do something mean to us in the season finale. So that makes sense. I
Mhm.
feel like we are on pace.
Yeah. The pattern is really unfolding quite accurately. And I feel like this episode ends with a tee-up that is very much preparing for a very exciting next episode. So we'll see if the pattern holds. All right, well, let's give a spoiler alert. If you haven't seen episode 8, we are diving fully in now to talk about all of the details of this episode. So we recommend not continuing to listen if you haven't watched this episode yet. If you have, come along for our conversation. Okay, what are some big things that stood out to you about some of the events that happened in this episode, or some of those details that we get to learn about from Cobell's backstory and her childhood, really?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why maybe I was more willing to go along with this episode than you were maybe is because of where it ends. You know that we're going to explore Harmony's backstory so that she can get to a place where hopefully in the next episode, we get the Harmony Cobell that we have been wanting all season. And so we see a lot of kind of interesting sides of her. We've only seen really like put together Lumen Harmony. We've seen her destroy her little shrine that she had after she got fired. We see her, sparring with Helena. But this is so interesting to see her in an entirely different context and understand how deep Lumen runs through her veins and how much this company has both meant to her and hurt her. And so I'm really, really hoping that all of these little tidbits that we get in this episode around kind of what's motivating her will lead to that really explosive payoff that we've been wanting. We want Harmony to just come in and be agent of chaos and burn the thing down. And will the show go there? Probably not. But if we get a version of that, if we get some sort of Harmony on the war path, I'm going to be here for that.
Yes, we just want some action that will be ushered in by the wrecking ball that will be Harmony Cobell. One of the things that I really appreciated about this episode is that Cobell's loyalties are still vacillating and able to be swung up in the direction of being anti-Lumen, but then also we see how, like you mentioned, the loyalty runs so deep and it's so much a part of just like who she is that that's going to be hard for her to get there too. So I just love that this episode continues to stoke and fuel that inner turmoil that she's probably feeling, which is she's given so much of herself to this company, to Kier and the Egans and all of the things that we don't even understand about what she's given herself to. But then also the company has hurt her and exploited her giftings and her ideas, and that's some great fodder for some rebellion and leading the charge for this like we're gonna take Lumen down group. So I love that doesn't get fully resolved in this episode, and she's still kind of a loose cannon, and we don't know which side will ultimately win out and how she will align her loyalties accordingly. And she's very much still teetering and tottering on that very delicate edge between either side. And I love that this episode doesn't give us a clear winner quite yet. There's lots of time for unpredictability in Harmony.
And I love that we learn that she isn't just a middle manager, obviously no shade on middle management. It's a very hard job to do. All respect. But she hasn't just been a severed floor manager. She knows some things, and she has a whole different side of her mind that is able to dream up these incredible scientific accomplishments, and she discovered these things and all of this. And so I love that this episode, we've thought of Harmony in one way, and now we're seeing, obviously we learn more about her family and her childhood, but we also learn about her intelligence and her scientific endeavors and these creations of hers that Lumen has co-opted as its own. And I love the way that was revealed, because she's so much more than we've seen. And I think that that's going to make it really fun in these last few episodes of this season to see which parts of Harmony she is able to really bring to the fore in her, hopefully, burn Lumen down rampage.
Mm-hmm. And how will her intelligence and her scientific genius help the cause in some way, or be used to understand what, like, kind of anticipate Lumen's next steps, because she's got that insider knowledge, and that is now an advantage for this team and this crew that kind of needs Cobell, perhaps, in order to take Lumen down. Like, she's truly been in the inside, and she also knows fundamentally how they work and how their technology is working. And so if we want to infiltrate that, this team kind of needs Cobell, and they don't even know it yet.
But we know it. We've known it this whole time. We've been saying, come on, Harmony, the water's fine. Please join the resistance. We are ready for you. And now she is finally ready for the resistance, hopefully.
Yeah. We'll see if she gets there or not. I don't know. Helena Egan is incredibly sharp and will probably use some manipulation tactic in some way as well. So they're up against quite a foe, but we would love to see her join the resistance. And I just want to see her also not even fully commit to the resistance. Like, I think that would be kind of boring, but I want to see her loyalty sway, and her emotions are getting in the way as she thinks back to how much perhaps like Kier or the Egans have given her or whatnot. Like, I would love to see that, like, constant, almost like the delicacy of her loyalty, and how maybe not solid that is, and how she is able to be manipulated or attempted to be manipulated by others for either side would just be really fun, because it's almost like she's such a key game piece that whichever side she aligns to has so much advantage. And so I love that she holds that much influence in the outcomes of this plot,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that will be really interesting to see. And we've seen, we know that she was raised within the cult of Lumen, like she was knee deep in it. And man, coming out of that is hard. And so I hope that there is that tension and that exploration that we see in her. That would be so fun and interesting.
Yeah, and really dramatic. It would be so dramatic. Oh. Oh. Some other interesting things that I thought were notable in this episode: child labor. Her and the guy that she's talking to at the beginning of the episode, as they're conversing and reminiscing on their time spent together, they mention, I think one of them says, no, it was child labor. And I think that's something that we've been talking about and speculating with Miss Huang, who is part of the intern program, I think, or apprenticeship program, some program that is unethical. And so it's fascinating that that's mentioned in such a explicit way. And I wonder if we'll get more to that whole thread line and just understanding of like the sinister practices of Lumen.
Yeah, there's also the mention of the Wintertide Fellowship, which
Mm-hmm.
Milchick mentioned to Miss Wong, I think in the previous episode or the one before. So they're definitely they're going there. There's an acknowledgement of that is going on, and I find that fascinating. I'm curious to see where this show will take all of that. Another aspect that I found really interesting about this episode is when Sissy is talking with Harmony and she says there was no town before the factory, and I found that to be really interesting as well. It actually made me think of Nomadland, which we watched a million years ago, and how, this like big Amazon warehouse came in and just affected the entire town, and how all of these people had their lives changed because of this large corporation that was now in this place. And we see that here. We see the effects of a large corporation coming in and how it changes the entire town, changes everybody's lives. And Harmony even mentions it when she first walks in to that cafe of saying, wow, everything is different here. This is not how I remembered it. And so I'm so curious about what has happened to that factory and to that town, and you can almost sense this, like, okay, the factory comes in, then there's all of this new like life and excitement and economic activity in the town, and then something happens and then that is all destroyed, and now they are left worse off than they were before. And so that's a really interesting piece of this that this show kind of tees up, because we have been primarily in wherever Mark lives and wherever that large Lumen facility is. And so it's interesting to see this smaller town that was infiltrated by Lumen, and Lumen changed everything. And then we see the after effects of that. So I think as we're talking about taking down Lumen and like revolution and all of that, there's also a very real cost to the community that this company operates. And obviously, we do want everybody to be working for an ethical company. We would like Gemma and everybody to be freed. But I love that this episode in some ways is almost like zooming out and letting us see that all of these things are part of a larger context, and how these other towns and people's livelihoods are affected by the things that Lumen is doing, not just the workers.
That's a fabulous point. Yeah, because we have experienced like parts of society on the outside world over the course of the show, but not a lot. I feel like we spent so much time just like in Mark's apartment or in Devin and Rickon's home, and we get a little taste of the protests and some of the anti-severance news footage. But yeah, you're right. On the whole, we just haven't seen the outside world and what society and towns and neighborhoods and cities really look like. And so getting to see the far-reaching effects of Lumen, not just on individuals, but on society and ecosystems of industry, is something that is new for sure in this episode. And the world kind of expanded a little bit. And very accurate as well. Again, Severance being such an intentional show to be reflecting these very real world dynamics and bring them to light in the show and through the storyline. I feel like that is likely a larger meta point that the show is hoping that would just be surfaced up and interrogated by us as viewers.
Yeah, this show is so smart. I also loved the town that they chose. Like when we were first, from the very beginning, as Harmony is driving down this like winding road and you see the water with all the icebergs and stuff, my initial thought was like, oh my gosh, I want to go there. Like it's so gorgeous. It's so like bleak and dreary, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. So, but I thought that it was so smart to choose that location to really show that this community, presumably, once was really thriving and really full. And there was like a robust, architecture and infrastructure here. And now it's all gone. And I thought, this really harsh weather, the intense snow that's everywhere, the ice, and it's all either like white or almost black. There's not a lot of color there. I thought just the setting and the choice of location was absolutely brilliant for this and helps bring so much atmosphere and visual interest to everything that's going on.
Yeah, we are very much outside of the severed floor. It reminds me a little bit of the way that there was almost this breath of fresh air that we were able to have with the Ortbo episode, where we're like, wow, nature, beautiful, really soothing our soul. And we haven't seen a lot of that. We don't get a lot of that even in the other episodes. When we're in the outside world, we're often just, again, in homes, in Mark's home and in in Rickon's home, or visiting some of the other folks. So we just get more expansive world building, which is very fun. I think one of the other details that was particularly interesting to me, and it's related to, I think, the child labor and internship program, is that Sissy describes or mentions that Cobell was, and she uses the word like identified as having Kier in her by the Egans from a young age. And I just thought that is such a notable dynamic for understanding the Cobell harmony lore of how did she get even swept up in this whole thing? And clearly there's some kind of recruitment or some kind of way that the Egans are identifying, whether it's talent, whether it's intelligence, whether it's ideation, whether it's certain personality types. But there's a clear set of dimensions that was used with baby Cobell. And I think she also is described as being incredibly industrious as well. And so it was just such an insight into how Cobell has been wired from a young age, but then also how did she even meet all of these hooligans and the kind of practices, again, these suggestions about the practices of the Egans and Lumen for how they're even identifying and like bringing these people in that are somehow being manipulated or tricked to give their lives over.
Yeah, that part of the conversation in particular made me wonder how much this show is going to lean into Lumen almost being like a cult. Because if you view it through that lens, that has some really sinister implications, in a cult. If the leader most often is an older man and then he sees a younger woman that he deems as special, chosen by God, of interest to him, and then she gets special perks and favors, but usually it's for really, really gross purposes. So that was where my mind went. My mind went straight to cults, which is not great. So I'm curious if the show is going to go there, or if the show is going to shy away from that and have it more of business and like a mentorship program, schooling, all of that, or if they are going to bring in that more cult side of it, because there is a whole religion around Kier, if you will. Maybe it's not a religion per se, but it's at least on the road to a religion, and we've seen them in the episode with Bert and the dinner talking about how Lumen uses religion to recruit people. So I don't know. My brain went to cults. I kind of hope that the show doesn't go there, but that was definitely on my radar, and I'm just curious where the show's going to go, because there's been a couple of breadcrumbs to maybe get us there, but I could see them also maybe going in a different direction as well.
Well, to support the cult theory, Sissy has a whole comment that she makes about the locked room to the mom's room, where she says
Mm-hmm.
something along the lines of like, we can't open that door until all who knew her sit with Kier, or something like that, right? It's so menacing and eerie and haunting. And so I mean, I had a million questions from that, but that's definitely supporting the cult working hypothesis for sure.
And we're just gonna have to find out. We don't know what the show will do.
Yeah. Yeah. But that seems like that's such a culty, like
Mhm.
religion coded way of like communicating too. In these like words and phrases that like kind of don't make sense, but clearly have some like larger meaning. Like who sit with Kier, like what does that even mean? But also you're like the ones that have yielded and surrendered to him or pledged their loyalty to him. There's just so many ways to interpret that are, I'm like, this is sounding familiar.
And I think the uh, let me get my thoughts together. Another thing that I found really interesting, especially in those conversations between Harmony and Sissy, is their use of language and that they don't
Yeah.
speak like humans do.
No.
And like Harmony has always had just such an interesting way of phrasing things, and that's just part of her charm. But I think all of that is especially interesting given what has happened with Milchek and the way that Lumen is really policing Milchek's speech and his attempts to conform to their standards. Whereas we've seen Harmony, either that was never reported on for her, or she has rebelled in that way and chosen to continue to speak in a way that is her way to speak. And I find that really interesting, that contrast between how these two individuals speak. They both are very eloquent. They speak in very distinct patterns. Their word choices are always excellent. And I just want to know so much more about Harmony. Like, was this ever an issue for her? And has she chosen to rebel, or was it just never an issue so she was able to speak the way that she wants? I don't know.
Mhm.
But I think that that's a really interesting point that the show is also seeming to tee up for us.
Yeah, they speak in such strange ways. It's so notable because we're confused. We're like, what are you saying? It's sometimes the words constructed are incredibly like eerily beautiful and poetic too. It's a little bit like the way that Milkcheck speaks with such incredible construction of words together, and yet so much of that is being stamped out of him as we speak. And so, yeah, that was definitely, and they both seem to kind of begin to match and mirror each other in how they speak as well. It was more notable to me towards the end of the episode, which I don't know was maybe an intentional choice that like it's kind of like when you go home and you're back with your friends that have certain phrases or talk differently than you, the more time you spend after you've been away for a while, you start to just like adopt that again. And I wonder if there was a little bit of that dynamic happening as well.
Yeah, falling into those same old
Patterns.
patterns.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is totally what happens when you go home after a long time.
Mhm.
You just
Yeah.
you like default back to these other versions of yourself.
Yeah. So we see, and I think that's an interesting piece that we see in Harmony in this episode, because for the most part, we've seen really like buttoned down, controlled Harmony. Like she is controlling herself. She is in control of situations. Like she's got it together most of the time. Not all the time, most of the time. And I love that in this episode, especially when she goes back to the house, you see her, this is not the right word, but you see her like regressing to these younger versions of herself. You see her like barging in and rebelling, you see her like standing up to Sissy in a way that you could see like a teenage version doing that to
Yeah.
her. Her and Hampton have a moment. They also inhale something together. Like this is very like rebellious teenager, young adult kind of behavior. And I thought that that was also really interesting to see from her in particular, because she has been historically, for the most part, so controlled, so adult, so in charge. And in this one, she's not.
Yeah, yeah. we just have never seen those sides of her. She's always behind that desk, at the severed floor and so composed, like you're saying. So it's kind of fun to see this like younger, like more spontaneous, more frivolous, more instinctual side of Cobell, which also really helps the trajectory that she's on, where she's just on a rampage and kind of getting tunnel vision and doing whatever she wants as the whims and fancies of her mind come to her. And that's going to make for some fun times for us as viewers.
Yes. Yes. This really controlled, put together character finally letting loose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yes. Okay, other big things that we wanted to call out before we give out some TVNS awards?
Another thing that I've been kind of thinking about since the end of this episode is the importance of women in this show and their resistance or their fight for liberation. Like, this whole thing, I think, kind of comes down to these women pushing against the system and pushing against what's wrong. In the first season, Helly R is fighting back, and I think she plays a large part in awakening Mark's imagination of what's possible. And then, obviously, with Petey and everything, then that snowballs. And then we see Ragabi out there in the world trying to reintegrate people, and that's her form of resistance. And without Ragabi, like, Petey would have never come back to Mark and helped that snowball get rolling. Mark wouldn't be reintegrated right now. And then in this season, we see Gemma in the previous episode trying to escape. And then in episode 8, Harmony is presumably gearing up to be part of the resistance. So I love that aspect of it. And especially because in corporate culture and business and all of that, like, women can be overlooked more often. And I really appreciate that this show is highlighting these women who are pointing out what's wrong and are taking action and are trying to improve where they can. And I think that that's really notable. It's not this like overly rosy sense of it, but I think all of them provide such a vital piece of this. And so I don't know, that's just something that I've been thinking about, is to center these women and to make their stories and their actions so important in a film that is critiquing, amongst other things, corporate culture, felt really notable and important.
Which is so exciting. It's so cool. And it's also Devin as well, who is identifying and a change maker in a lot of ways and pushing forward new directions in partnership with Ragabi as well. Yeah, so they're really igniting momentum to change and evolve what already exists. And that's really neat and really exciting. And they're each fearless and they're all doing it in their own ways too, which I think is really notable. From the positions and the relationships that they have, they're figuring out how to move forward in the direction of their convictions, and they're doing it in their own personal styles and with their special skill sets and all of that as well. So I think that's neat to see. And so honestly, let's see this like Ocean's 8, I think is the all-female one. Let's see this Ocean's 8 crew come together,
Yeah, let's go.
That'd be sick. Yeah. Very cool. Let me think. Are there any other big things that we wanted to talk about? We hit most of the big ones.
I think I have just little things left.
Okay. Let's hear some of the little things.
Okay. One little thing is shout out to Jane Alexander, who plays Sissy in this episode. Like, Jane Alexander is always fantastic, and she brings it in this episode. And she's just such a joy. And I was just so pleased to see her in this episode. She does a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. She is fabulous and really nails it. And there are so few characters in this one episode. There's literally 3 in total. So everyone is really carrying their weight.
Yeah, they do great. Another little thing that I absolutely loved is when Harmony, she's searching for this thing and she goes outside to the outside basement. I don't know what to call that little room, but she goes in there and the music is so creepy. It's so good. It's like very sparse. It's just a couple of notes playing, and then sometimes there'll be this like dissonance that comes when you hit like it felt like somebody was just like plucking on the piano and then they just like hit two keys at once every once in a while. It
Mm.
was so good and creepy and sinister, and it just felt so appropriate for the show, the setting, the journey that Harmony was on. Like, oh, just fantastic.
Yeah. The score is doing work in this episode, man. It's quite awesome to see. So, yeah, it's so eerie. Everything is so eerie. Even the landscape is eerie. It's reminding me a
Mhm.
lot of True Detective season 4, I believe, where just the town and place of Ennis was its own character. It feels like that's the case here. There's always something lurking in the shadows here.
Oh, yes, it's so eerie. I loved it. It was
Yeah.
great. I want to go visit this town. I'm not gonna lie though. Like, I'm here for the eeriness.
Yeah.
I think my last like little tiny thing is I love that at the beginning of this episode, we know that Harmony has been just driving around on her journey. We spend so much time watching her brush her teeth, and I just love that. I was like, way to go, Harmony. Dental hygiene is important. Way to take care of yourself, my girl. Like, it was nice. I was I was like, this is an important thing to include because you got to make sure that you don't have stinky breath. So Harmony is doing the work.
Yeah. Oh, man. She is. And why does it last so long? That's the other thing. Like, she well, the other little detail that I love from that scene, which is so great, is she takes a swig from her water bottle to, like, rinse and spit and just tosses it by the side of the road into the
Mhm.
snow with such
Yeah.
one fell swoop, and I'm like, "That is Harmony Cobell." Yeah. She's back, y'all.
She is back. Back with fresh breath.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. So good. Cool. Okay, any other big things before we give out some awards?
No, I think we hit all of my big ones.
Okay, let's give out some awards, shall we? The first
Yeah.
category is Employee of the Week. Sarah, what's your choice?
Yeah, I want to give it to Hampton for just being a really good bro.
Yeah.
You know, he
He
drives her all
does.
the way to this house. He sticks around all day. Like, man, he gives her his truck. Like, he's a
I
real one.
know. I know. He gives her something for them to get on to, inhale together.
Yeah.
Just hooking her up. My gosh. Yeah. Okay, my choice for Employee of the Week is all of the floating ice montages. They're doing
Ooh.
work.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
they are
fun.
doing work. They're gorgeous. I loved every second of them. I was happy as a clam.
Yeah, they're really fun. They're really fun. They add so much texture and atmosphere, really putting in the work. The next category is Move the Needle Moment. What is your choice for this one?
Harmony finally answering the phone.
Yep, that was mine as well. Cobell
Yep.
and Mark speaking on the phone. Supposedly a reintegrated Mark as well. So,
Hmm. Very intriguing.
yeah, yeah. Okay, next category is Achievement in Corporatees. What's your choice?
Yeah, I want to give it to Sissy for when she says, there was no town before the factory.
Yeah, yeah. Very notable line from this episode for sure.
Hmm.
I am going to give this to Cobell, to Hampton. I will not be your punching bag for your resentments.
Yes.
So good.
There were so many good lines in this one. It was great.
Yeah, it was really great. Okay, looking ahead, what are you excited to see? We only got 2 episodes left. So, what are you excited to see as we close out the season?
I mean, we've talked about it. We want to see Harmony as an agent of chaos, just going in, you know, bringing out the dead bodies, whatever it is. Like, let's bring Lumen down. Is that going to happen in this season? No, because then there wouldn't be any more show. But I want some sort of chaos, and Harmony is just a great catalyst for that. I would like more eloquent speeches from Milchek. I
Yes, please.
always want more Bert, so like I hope we get some more good time with these other characters that the show has created for us. And then of course we will see what reintegrated Mark looks like. And I
Yeah.
think if reintegrated Mark retains all the memories of both Marks, that's going to be really fascinating to explore. And I hope, if that's where we're going, that the show gives plenty of time for us to see all of that processing that Mark is going to have to go through as he grapples with these two parts of himself that are just really into two very different women. And I think that's going to be interesting to explore if the show goes that route. I want to see some wrestling and tension within Mark, because that would just be interesting.
Yeah. They better. Come on. Like, you've been teeing us up this whole time. I hope he retains both memories. Or I guess alternative, it could be interesting to see like which ones win out for whatever reason, and like how does that work based on like intensity of emotion or whatever it might be. I still want to know about the goat room. I want to know about Miss Huang. I think those are my two main fixations for this season. And I mean, I think we're teeing up and gearing up, obviously, for reintegrated Mark meeting Cobell. So I'm just so curious where Cobell will land and what the show's going to do with her character. Because for a lot of the other characters, there's less of a clear, like, fork in the road, perhaps. Like, they can go in a million different directions. But I think Cobell has such a clear choice to make now, and she seems to be in a mental state and an emotional state where she's about to make some choices. So just the amount of agency and conviction that we're going to get to see from Cobell and how it influences this plot, I think is going to be particularly exciting. So yeah, I think those are my two big things.
It's a good list. And goat room is important. We must never forget about the goats.
I will never forget.
That you are here.
We will. You are going to hear it from me till the end of time. So till I get some
I'm
answers.
excited. I'm here for this. We need answers to the goat room.
Yes, please. I need something to make this fun. So the goats are my fun little activity.
Mm-hmm.
To patiently
and they keep teeing it up. So like,
they do.
Obviously, it is a thing. We need to keep asking about it. So we're just doing our jobs, asking about the goats.
Indeed. Yep. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of episode 8. You can find it available on Apple TV+. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continue our journey through Severance Season 2. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about episode 8. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at tvnspod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back soon to discuss the penultimate episode of the season, episode 9, coming up real soon. I hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.